So yeah, let's discuss auto trim. So what happens with auto trim, especially on Takeoff? As you can see, auto trim is activated at the moment. Below 200 feet, auto trim wouldn't be on, of course, and you would actually manually trim your plane according to whatever data you got, like the weight, where's the weight, etc. There'll be like some calculation, of course, when that's actually needed. Of course, at the moment, we will when the certification happens, and of course the auto trim by then will be turned off at the specific height altitude, and there'll be also a manual switch to turn it off as well. Um, when we've done the certification, we'll find out exactly what trim you need for takeoff to take off perfectly every time before auto trim comes on. But yeah, so usually your horizontal stabilizer would just be horizontal, it would just be straight, 0 degrees rotation. Of course, at the moment, that is not. And as you can see, its position means that the plane is going to go nose up. Um, so what you have to do currently, if you're testing it now until that condition is turned off, or even if you find when this is done, if you find for some reason the auto trim is on and it's up, it's this is where this all these checks are going to come in. Um, if you find, for example, that the trim is not in its default position, I would advise you then to turn the yaw damper off, make sure it's off, and then reset your trim to the correct position. At the moment, of course, my trim says 0 because I haven't connected the output trim and the input trim together. That's going to be done, of course, so that the trimmer knows exactly what's going on um, with the plane. Um, so yeah, basically, give me 1 second. So the next thing that goes on here is let's basically take ourselves to the runway, and to take ourselves to the runway, we can, of course, I'll be nerfing the engine power just a bit because the idle is pretty strong. In terms of the speed, we build up a lot of idle speeds really quickly. Usually, it's supposed to be maybe 1 knots every, I don't know, 20 or 30 seconds. So as you can see, where we reached like 11 very quickly. Taxiing is very easy, especially with this new version now. In the previous versions, of course, we made it a lot more harder because we wanted to see how people practice. And we, as I said, all the previous versions have just been testing versions. We've wanted to make sure that people have the skills, or there are some people that have the skills to at least try for unknown before we bring any proper version. And what that does is, when you've learned with a hard version, when the proper version comes out, or one version that is done, you'll find the proper version very easy because you've already had the skills with the hard version. The same reason we sent people to do a landing competition on Flightline. We know that Flightline had some very difficult um, planes in terms of controlling at times to handle. So that's why we sent people there. So that when you come on the A350, you'll find it pretty easy. So there's no excuse not to do well. So I can pretty much comfortably move on idle here. Of course, if my speed is going down, I only need to put just a little bit of speed, and my speed will pick up again, or at least hold. So as you can see, it's holding that. I'm gonna, of course, make my turn here. Gonna let the speed die down a bit. I'm gonna line up the nose wheel here. Okay, and once my plane is somewhat lined up, sometimes a big behemoth like this needs a bit of turning. There we go. Brakes on, brake on. Alright, so with that done, In this phase right now, I would usually ask you to then check um, that, of course, your horizontal stabilizer would have been set at the trim you asked it to be at. So if it turns out it's like zero point 0.1 or minus zero point 0.1, which is usually, we'll have the correct phrasing if it's nose down or nose up trim, you would make sure that that's set, and you would also make sure it's not moving, because if it's moving, that means the auto trim is on, and of course you don't want that to happen. You would make sure you would have done this at the gate, which is to make sure your rudder works, etc. Um, with our planes, of course, we allow you to hold the trim now instead of, a simple flick like this. The trim can be, the rudder can be held. So you can hold the rudder, you can put a small bit of input and leave it there instead of holding the key. So that makes a crosswind landings a lot more easier to do. Um, at the moment, I believe our yaw damper is off. As you can see, the yaw damper is doing nothing there. So I have full control. When you take off, you'll notice you will not have any control again over the rudder. For the simple reasons that the yaw damper takes over. We will have a master switch, of course, so you can turn off the yaw damper, say for crosswind conditions or whatever. Okay, so just make sure, of course, that all your settings are done. At this point in time, you'd probably want to also set your flaps to takeoff mode, as you can see here. You'd also want to press your shift key to have a look at all the data for the plane, the V1, the VR, V2, etc. data that you just want to get to know about the plane. Of course, these will be a bit more fine-tuned for now. Um, but yeah, literally when it comes to this, um, that's all you need. Okay, with this done, you would start your roll off. Of course, I'm gonna get my FP there. I know that I'm in keyboard mode. Start off with 30 knots, and then go to your, if you got flex mode, your flex setting or toggle, you can. I ideally wouldn't need that because the power the engine has will get me up into the air without that. If I start noticing that my plane starts nosing away, I can always use the rudder. As you can see, because the elevator is aft up, the plane has the tendency to pull up like this. Um, if you notice your plane starts lifting up, the advice is to push on your elevator to bring it down. Of course, my plane hasn't MCAShed me just now, as it would have. At certain occasions, it will MCASH you if you don't respond quickly. Of course, that's not going to be on the final version because we would have auto trim turned off. But as you can see now, I made a perfect takeoff. The plane stayed straight and level. And then we're going to make our left turn here. And I have full control of the plane. As you can see, I can pitch down, and the horizontal stabilizer will pitch down to keep my free trim. A more detailed show will be if I show you that. Notice how the horizontal stabilizer just moved there. Notice how the horizontal stabilizer is moving there. Okay. So the horizontal stabilizer will move basically where it's set, and push down again, and it will trim itself exactly where it needs to be. So my horizontal stabilizer is in a perfect condition for flight, and that's pretty much all I need from it. So make sure, of course, when the final version is out, of course, make sure that when you're in the gate, you test your surfaces work in terms of they move. This is what pilots do. They usually have a test it. They don't actually test it in the gate scrap that. They test that after they turn on engine. So they will do a aileron check. They will do a rudder check. They will do an elevator check. They may test the horizontals. I don't know if they test the flaps, but if you really have the time, you can test the flaps. as well. And that's pretty much it. Up at this phase, when I've taken off, I would set my flaps to manual mode. I set the flight mode to manual mode, and all manual mode does is it just sets the flaps back to zero and lays the plane in the correct phase of flight. And that's pretty much it. You don't really touch flight mode until you're in one of the three phases, either landing, takeoff, or of course in cruise. That you don't really mess around with that. Um, if I'm in keyboard mode, for example, and I want to hold a specific pitch, so let's see, if I want to hold 9, okay, or 8 or whatever, I try and I find the exact phase that I want to hold, um, and press the middle mouse button. So I've pressed down, you can see it's requesting hold at 8. And what it will do is it will trim the plane for 8 pitch at my speed, meaning that if I take this out now and I go into keyboard mode, I should be able to pitch down and the plane will hold when I put it into the middle of the circle, pitch up, and the plane will be able